Welcome back to Echo Ridge. Today, we're going to take a look at the top 5 things I wish I knew before I started playing Civilization VII. In this way, when you get your hands on it, you will already start ahead of the curve. Number 1 on the list has to do with scouts. I have a warrior here, and you'll notice that it has a 2 movement. And at first glance, you look at the warrior and realize, well, it can move just as far as a scout, so I might as well use warriors instead of scouts. Even a look here in the Civilopedia doesn't really reveal what makes the scout so special, other than saying it's ideal for revealing terrain and discovering new locations. But you'll notice it says 2 moves, 2 sight range, base cost 30, maintenance 0. Identical to the warrior, except the warrior also has melee strength. Well, the key to making the most out of your scouts has to do with their abilities. There are 2 that separate the scout and truly make them valuable. The first one is a lookout function. If I have any movement left and I click lookout, the scout sets up, well, a lookout tower and then increases its sight range by 1. This could be handy if you're trying to keep an eye on another civilization and watch enemy movements, whether that be right next to their borders, or if you wanted to set it up closer to your home. That way the fog of war isn't hiding any enemy advancements that you're not aware of. The other ability is called search. And while I think Lookout has a lot of value in the mid and perhaps the end game, Search really shines here in the early game when looking for all those goody huts. We can see here that it'll increase the sight range by 1 for 1 turn and reveal all discoveries within twice this range. So if I move into this flat desert, based on the scout's sight range, this is all we sort of see. But even with 1 movement left, I am able to conduct a search. And not only by doing that, does it give the scout an entire another tile worth of sight range, but it then doubles that so you can find, in this case, a coastal edifice a far distance away from the scout, allowing you the advantage of knowing where to go first. So remember, if you're going to use your scouts, make sure you take advantage of their special abilities. The next tip that I've seen a lot of creators not take full advantage of has to do with the army commanders. As most people are aware, army commanders now can walk around with a bunch of units inside the same tile. Likewise, we can deploy them with the click of a single button. And while this is a powerful new mechanic of the army commander, it's not the one I'm talking about. The abilities I'm speaking about are when you're in combat, and they are coordinated attack and focus fire. I've seen a lot of folks making 2 individual attacks towards the same target. But if you plan on attacking the same target, the best thing to do is use one of these abilities, because by doing so, you're giving the units a combat strength bonus. You can only use 1 of them per turn, and they do take the army commander's movement points. But by clicking focus fire and then selecting a tile, now both archers attack the same target, but they did so with the bonus to combat strength. Note that the army commander can have melee units do the exact same thing, except it's called coordinated attack instead of focus fire. And in both abilities, the units will all receive a +2 to combat strength. Also of note is that you don't actually need 2 or more units to perform the focus fire or the coordinated attack. Here, I only have 1 range unit left, and I could do a standard range attack, but if I wasn't going to use the army commander's abilities anyways, I might as well do the focus fire to give that archer +2 to combat strength. The next tip has to do with resources, and in my first couple of games, I couldn't figure out what was preventing me from assigning resources to different settlements. But you'll notice in each resource there's a small icon. These icons represent what type of resource it is. In fact, Civilization VII has 5 different types of resources. 3 that I'm going to be able to highlight for you today. Once you grab one of the resources on the map, you'll unlock the ability to move your resources around. But that ability locks again until you get a new resource. But here I have a bonus resource in the form of ivory, and then city resources in the form of jade and kaolin. The long and short of it is, empire resources stack up here and apply their bonuses towards your entire empire. City resources can only be assigned to cities, whereas bonus resources can also be applied to towns. Inversely, bonus resources can also be assigned to a city. Another question you might have about resources is whether or not they stack, and they do. For instance, I have 3 horses, and each one of them gives my cavalry units +1 to combat strength. They also give an additional +1 against infantry and ranged units. And if we take a look at the tooltip of this Chevalier who's getting ready to attack this infantry unit, we can see the +6 to combat strength due to the total amount of our horse's resources. This next tip is rather important because you're going to see these terms used throughout your Civilization VII gameplay, and they are not interchangeable. And that's the difference between a settlement, a town, and a city. Rome is a city, and we can tell because we're able to use our production. If I go over here to Neapolis, it is a town, and our only option is to purchase buildings and units. All the extra production that Neapolis creates gets converted over into gold. These towns all have a focus, and depending on what age you're in, there's quite a few different options that dictate how they use their resources that they collect. Alternatively, you can also convert the town into a city by once again spending more gold. Now when I go back into the same settlement, you can see that we have production and purchasable queues. So that's the difference between a city and a town. The last one is the term settlement. The term settlement encapsulates both towns and cities. This term is also inclusive to independent villages as well. The last tip I wanted to give you was to underscore how important influence was in your game. It's very easy to start loading up on a lot of the diplomatic options. For instance, a research collaboration that would cost me 120 influence, or befriending independence, which here in the exploration age takes 340 influence, whereas in the antiquity age it only takes 170. Still a lot of influence. Or even when another civilization reaches out to you and you have the choice to accept it or support it for the cost of more influence. I say all this to underscore that you need to be very careful with your influence use because it is very valuable, and possibly even keeping a little bit of it in the bank because it is very valuable when it comes to war. And that has to do with war support and war weariness. Taking a look at this tooltip, you can see that my Chevalier has a -2 to combat strength due to war weariness, and you can influence that by changing your war support. And you can do that at the start of a war or in the middle of it. In fact, if you click on the civilization portrait, you can see your current war here, and by clicking on it, you'll notice there's an action that says support yourself. Notice that I have 3 tokens, whereas Tecumseh has 5, giving them the +2 bonus in war support. But because I've saved up so much influence, I can spend 120 here to increase my war support, which not only impacts the combat strength as we've shown, but also happiness across your empire. Let me click this again, and then one more time. And now, from Tecumseh having a +2 bonus, I now have a +1 bonus. And you'll notice now, Tecumseh's unit is receiving a -1 to combat strength due to war weariness. And my happiness went from a +17 to a +43 across my empire. That's going to wrap up this video and the amount of gameplay footage I'm allowed to show during this stage of the embargo. If you missed out on it, I've done a Let's Play and First Impressions on Civilization VII just a few days ago. I'll leave that link in the top right corner. While I do dabble in a lot of different strategy titles, know that Civilization VII will be a firm part of this channel here in the future. So until next time, much love, happy gaming, and I'll talk to you soon.